Hey, and welcome to the Aortic Kitchen. This is Rob and Mindy Seltzer, or the Aortic Chef Rob Seltzer,
The registered dietitian, Mindy.
and we are here this evening to talk to you about cooking healthy for people with aortic disease, and which also could also be cooking healthy for everybody. Mindy and I spent a long time. If you were here the first session with us a couple weeks ago, you'll know that we've been working in this side of the business for a long time. Mindy is a dietitian, mine is a chef, teaching culinary skills to doctors in culinary medicine at a medical school. So tonight is our first actual cooking session, and we're going to cover a couple different things. I am going to be demonstrating how to make stock, because stock is just a really important ingredient. It's not something that we necessarily eat. Nobody serves a bowl of stock when you go out to a restaurant. They don't give you just a bowl of stock. They give you soup, or they give you a sauce or a roast or something else that was cooked with stock. So in the kitchen, we consider stock to be an ingredient. We make lots of ingredients in professional kitchens. We make mirepoix, we make spice blends, we make stocks, all sorts of things that we use to produce our other recipes. So we do spend a lot of time making stock. And doing that, we also we'll talk about mise en place and having everything together, and how to make the stock properly, the things that go into it. And a little bit later, we'll have that little discussion on what is the difference between stock and bone broth, because that is a topic of much discussion today. And hopefully I will be able to end that discussion for all of you. Now, Mindy has some other things that she's going to talk about that will relate to the stocks as far as a nutrition and health side.
So stocks, typically when you're buying in the grocery store, have an excessive amount of salt, unless you look at labels very hard, and we'll talk about label reading so that you can see where the difference is. An actual can of stock in the regular is about 860 milligrams or
Something like that.
in a cup. Where with aortic dissection or any sort of heart disease, sodium should be somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 milligrams a day. So if you have 1 cup of soup, you just had half your sodium for the day. So we'll talk about sodium, how it impacts you. We'll talk a little bit about the food labels. They just changed them in 2020 to have the most important information. And most of you have sure seen when you pick up any product, it's got portion size, calories, sodium, and fat on the front of almost every package now. And that's to help consumers make wise decisions. The other thing we're going to talk about is label dating. And of course, we make sure all our food in our house is the best it's supposed to be, and discard it when you're supposed to.
Right.
Maybe not. So I have 2 cans. Of course, they're very healthy products. So the first one is the poppy seed. Put the top up.
You want
a lid.
Okay.
So to start out,
If Josh is, we need to focus on the cutting board, if you would, Josh.
It's just a little too close, I think, to pick up the lettering.
okay. Well,
Okay.
too
Fine.
far away. Okay. So here's a can that I pulled out of my pantry, and it says best by August 2016. Here's the other can, and it says best by 9/13/2024. So do I have to throw that other one out? What do you think, Rob?
I'm the chef of zero waste, so I wouldn't throw it out. Unless it was really dented or it was puffy, had rust around the edges. Otherwise, this canned product is just fine.
And the reason this canned product is just fine is it's mostly sugar. So there's not anything that can go bad really within the can itself.
Go ahead.
If you look on the new label, just to compare the difference between the two labels. On this one, I'll come a little closer. You can see it tells you the calories per serving, followed by the amount of saturated fat, which is none because it's fruit, 5 grams of sodium, and 19 grams of total sugars. And when they say total sugars now, that's a combination of sugars that are natural in the product and added sugars. And that's where the label Nutrition Facts breaks it down a little bit more. Take your time to read the labels. You'll learn a whole lot about the products. They've done a whole bunch of things. They only put 4 items at the bottom where they used to have the slew of every vitamin and mineral you could possibly consume. FDA determined which ones are the healthiest, or the ones we have to watch for our health. They include vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. Then the rest you can look up if you want more detail.
Anyways,
So that takes care of canned goods. And that's on almost any products, fresh, frozen, but we're going to talk about the difference. So what is it when I go to the grocery store, Rob, and it says sell by?
all right, well, there are different days. Sell by is the date that the grocery store or the person that you're buying it from is required to sell a product by. So we really should start with, we have sell by, we have best by, and we have use by. Those are the 3 big dating terms that are used out there. Sell by, again, is what's on there for the, so when the grocer knows when to pull the product off the shelf. An item for that, if you look at a gallon of milk, it says sell by. That's the day that it needs to come out of the coolers at the grocery store. You can take it home still. The sell by is not a drink by or use by. The sell by is exactly what we said. It has to come off the shelf. Milk has its own case. In Florida, where we live, milk has to stay fresh for 10 days after the sell by date. And you should be still fresh to use. Everywhere else in the country, it's 7 days. That's just because of our extreme heat. They require a little more ultra pasteurization process. Okay. But really, the best way to tell if your milk is good or bad is, honestly, is the sniff test. It doesn't, if it smells bad, you throw it out or make something else out of it.
Nah, throw it out.
I make cheese out of it. It's okay. But so there's your sell by. Your best by, and is really, those are created by the manufacturers. And those are what they say that this, for the best product quality, you should use it by this date. For it to be at its absolute peak flavor and quality, use it by this date. But afterwards, so the cereal isn't quite as perfectly crisp, or the crackers.
Yeah, crackers, I disagree with him. Crackers, when the date's gone.
No, again, when they're not right. If they get rancid, you throw them out.
Wow.
If they're stale, you throw them out or use them for something else. But most other things, that's typically, again, that's a manufacturer date. And a lot of them are just, they make them up. There's really no rule on those best buys.
Well, a lot of that came about also with the pharmaceutical industry and keeping products labeled. Like, aspirin, you'll buy it, it'll have a 4-year shelf life. And if you hit that 4-year shelf life, you open that bottle, you can smell the ammonia. So it's started to break down. So it sort of carries, because USDA covers, Food and Drug Administration covers all of them. They labeled everything all the way across.
Right. So then that use by is the same way. That some of those are just arbitrary. So really the best thing is knowing how you handle your food, how you store it, and how long it's been open. Anything that's been open in a refrigerator, such as like deli meats, things like that, those things are all considered leftovers, and the recommended time for storage is 3 to 5 days for leftovers. So it's really a very cloudy thing, product dating. Very, very cloudy.
One of the easiest things to do if you buy packaged products, like if you buy a turkey breast and it says used by the 29th of May, you freeze it you start from the day, you still have all those days after you thaw. So you have, today is the 9th, so the 29th, you have 20 days. If you pull it out in June, you still have 20 more days to hold that product. But that's a little too confusing.
But if you freeze it on the day that it says freeze by, then when you pull it out and thaw it, you need to use it. That's the key for that. But just be careful. Use common sense when it comes to dating and foods. Most canned goods are good for. I mean, there's canned goods from World War II that are still being opened and
Are safe.
and are safe. Okay, take that out of here, please. Now, Mindy was also going to talk, since I'm making stock today, the stock obviously is liquid. We thought that Mindy would talk to you guys a little bit about fluids, fluid intake, and how it can affect your blood pressure, because all of us are very blood pressure aware. That's our biggest enemy. And fluid retention has a lot to do with that, as well as the electrolyte balance. So Mindy can talk to you a little bit about fluids, since I'll be making fluids.
Typically, when you leave the hospital, they may put you on a fluid restriction. Typically, it's about 1,000 milligrams to 1,000 milliliters to 1,500 milliliters. And that's 6 glasses of water a day. If you're hitting 8 and your legs are swelling, don't just immediately take your diuretic. Maybe cut back on your fluids a little bit. Maybe you had a little bit too much stew, which is a fluid, or you had a Jello, or you had some ice cream. That's all considered fluids.
Pigged out on watermelon.
Oh, watermelon is probably one of the only fruits that's 70% water. So if you eat a cup of watermelon, you're getting 3/4 of a cup of water. Okay, so pay close attention to your fluids. You monitor your sodium and your potassium. Potassium is another thing you guys have to be careful about, because your kidneys. And I don't talk about kidneys. It's not one of my strong suits. There are professional dietitians that can help you out there in the nephrology world. So remember to moderate your fluids. And the other thing is salt. I just went for my first Medicare checkup, and I like the way the doctor phrased it. He says, there's 2 things that we call white death: salt and sugar. So use them sparingly.
That goes with your sodium. Now, for those of you that are a little bit of the metric challenge, that Mindy said 1,000 milliliters to 1,500 milliliters. That's a liter to a liter and a half, which a liter is basically just over a quart, is 33.8 ounces. So if you see things about liters or milliliters, you can convert that, or know that 1 liter is just about a little bit over a quart. Okay. Then the sodium, we were talking about it on the labels, that the sodium has to be on labels today. Most of us, I know what happened with me. Mindy, when I came home, put me on a sodium restricted diet, which I'm still on, and I basically try not to consume more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. So how do we do that? Well, one, put the salt shaker away, and I am going to basically cook for you through this whole series without added salt. 2 is you do need to read those labels, and if you see that the sodium on a serving, because remember, on those labels, everything is per serving. Sometimes a can or a box or a bag has more than 1 serving, and sometimes it will then tell you the amount for the entire bag and the amount for the single serving. When you go to crackers and chips, they tell you you're allowed to have 11 Doritos. Well, who eats 11 Doritos? I haven't met that person yet.
If you do want to eat 11 Doritos, you get Ziploc bags, open the bag up, and make separate bags with 11 Doritos in it.
So the thing is, though, you want to look at the sodium levels. Anything under 5% is considered a low sodium. Anything over 20%. 20% is considered high. Okay. So if something has 15-20% of my daily sodium intake, think about that. You're going to eat this cup of tomatoes, and that's got 25%. That's a quarter of your daily sodium intake. So Now you've got to be really careful because so many foods have, so the milk has sodium, cheeses are very usually pretty high in sodium. So a lot of dairy items, all your snacks and things that we just shouldn't eat, we need to keep away from. But the important thing is to look at those labels and just think about it. I mean, if you really need to, you can write some of those down for a while to kind of add them up and figure out what you're taking. I'm kind of past that point. I can read it and make my decision. And we know that I'm under 1,500 milligrams a day of sodium, and that keeps me in balance. I have no edema. I don't, I don't swell up when I drink fluids and so on. So I know that I am in balance. Okay, really important.
Sodium is probably, typically you will be on a no salt added diet. As we said, put the salt shaker away, but that also includes no more lunch meats or deli meats, no hot dogs, life is boring, no corned beef, no ham, no pastrami, no sauerkraut. It's very, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having sauerkraut, but you might want to put it with a little roast beef the time you eat that instead of a hot dog. You don't have to be perfect.
All right, so why don't we move into the cooking portion of this? We'll jump back and forth. Then you'll throw in some nutritional tidbits as I am making things and doing stuff. So actually, the first thing we're supposed to do today was talk, which I didn't even mention to you, is talk about knife skills. And because I was requested that. Yes, I was requested that by several people. Show you.
Rob, your mic is off. Did you just turn it off? There you go. No?
Okay, folks, technical difficulty here. We are going to do this again.
There we go. Now I can hear you through Mindy's mic.
Okay, I just opened the settings and hear it. Okay, so you can hear me now. All right. So using knives and such is really not that difficult, but there's certain things that you need to. And knowing these things, one, will help you use a knife easier, cutting things. You'll have a much easier time, which also then lends to less fatigue. Using a knife, cooking in the kitchen basically is fatiguing. It makes you tired. I remember after my dissection, first time I tried to cook, I mean, lasted about 15 minutes in the kitchen. I had to give up. But using our arms is hard work. It makes your heart work harder. It's harder to pump the blood when your arms are raised. So they make you tired. So you want to try to use the knife properly. Ergonomics, as we call it, right? So let's first talk about the knives in general. So I have my knives. I'm going to put them on the cutting board here, Josh. I basically have 4 knives that are out, okay? And these 4 knives, this one is a typical chef's knife. This is a 9-inch chef's knife. It has a nice neoprene grip that makes it easy on your hands. It's easy to grip. It's in a soft grip, so to speak. And then the other parts, just to be a little bit technical here, all right? Oops, back in frame. So we have different parts. We have the handle, which is neoprene soft. This part here is called the bolster. I will refer to the bolster. If you remember bolsters on your mom's or grandma's couches, those are the big fat pillows on the side by the arms. It's a place to rest your head or to rest on. So we call this a bolster because we use this to rest our finger. Then have the blade with the edge.
Don't cut yourself, please.
And then this part up here from the top and all the way back into the handle. This knife blade actually goes all the way back into the handle. That's called a tang, just like the stuff the astronauts drink. Okay, tang, T-A-N-G. Want to get a knife like this one? That's there we go. This is called a full tang. See how it goes from the front all the way to the back. So if you're going to buy a knife, one, you want to ask, does it have a full tang? Then you have a wood or plastic handle, you should have at least 3 rivets in order to keep it stable and safe and from falling apart. Okay, 2 rivets is not enough. So then you want it balanced. So the knives that I'm recommending, every house should have. And then beyond that, it's up to you. A working chef's knife, okay, 8 or 9 inch, whichever fits your hand better. Okay, the paring knife. Now this is a 3-inch paring knife. I keep it very sharp because everything needs to be sharp. But the paring knife has lots of uses for smaller things, cutting fruits and doing small tasks. This would be a utility knife. So this is a 6-inch, smaller blade that you can use for smaller tasks, like cutting up vegetables, squash, zucchinis, things of that nature.
Or if you have smaller hands.
Or if you got small hands, use. It's also very similar to a lot of people use today, which is the Sudoku. And those work just as well. The only difference is, you notice the Sudoku does not have the curved blade that the chef's knife does. So as far as when I get into the rocking motion, it doesn't work as well. But these are very popular in households today and in kitchens, a lot of professionals. And then last, you do need a serrated knife for bread and for, actually, these are the best things ever for cutting melons. You want to do a watermelon, a cantaloupe, honeydew, these serrated knives. If I don't call it a bread knife, I call it a serrated knife. And they are the absolute best. Then also, now, how do we deal with this knife? So I'm already in the grip here. What you're going to do, I mean, holding a knife like this, like a baseball bat, is very uncomfortable. It is not ergonomically satisfying. It makes it harder to use. You don't have the movement with your wrist that you do when you do it properly. Hold it properly. You basically remember being young and playing like a finger gun, as we used to call them. So you got one finger out, the thumb is up, and the other 3 fingers are curled in. So take your knife. I'm left-handed, guys. So the 3 fingers wrap around the handle. The index finger, that was the front of the gun, goes along the side of that bolster on the inside of the blade. Okay, not it, on the blade itself. Then your thumb straight out, parallel with the top of the blade. So basically, you're squeezing the knife between your thumb and your forefinger. You're not using a lot of tension. You're just holding it steady. When you do it like this, your knife has too much wobble. When you hold it like this, the knife goes exactly where you want. You also have a lot of better wrist action and motion. Very simple. Okay. So again, finger pistol, finger gun, knife in the 3 fingers, index finger on the left side or the right side of the blade, and then your thumb there. Some people do kind of default and put their finger on the top. That is somewhat acceptable. That's what makes you really comfortable. That's fine. I would teach my students not to do that, but some still do, and some chefs still teach it either way that you want. So that's the holding the knife. Then using the knife, the motion with the chef knife, the beauty of the chef knife is that curve allows you to cut and rock and push. And the knife doesn't work. I do not push my knife through food. We'll show that in a minute. So you want to have that good, easy motion. you do this. Let the knife do the work. It's heavy enough, it will fall through the food.
So my favorite thing, what happens when you cut yourself with a dull knife?
Of course, you get a lousy, ragged cut and bleed a lot.
And if you do a straight cut with a sharp knife,
obviously, it's like a surgical tool, and you still bleed, but it'll heal easier.
and you might need stitches, but
So you do hold them the same way, no matter
So
what. The paring knife's a little bit different.
right here.
Okay, show you off my right hand. So, but no matter the length, I hold them all pretty much the same. And that's why you want to get a knife with a nice bolster. Those knives that just have a straight, sharp edge on the back of the blade, you use them, they cut through your finger.
They're vicious.
Yeah, and you get sores and so on. You don't want to get. Okay, so that's a quick thing on knives. And if you want to, buy, those are the questions you want to ask or look at when you're buying a knife. So we're going to start off with the chicken stock tonight. We're going to make a couple different types of stock. I want to show you a couple of slides. I'm going to share my screen, Josh. This will only take 2 minutes, folks.
7:25.
I'm watching. Thank you. Okay. Everybody sees that, I assume.
Roger that.
Yeah. There we go. So we're going to talk about what is stock itself. What is stock besides what you buy in the market? So stock's flavorful liquid. That's the big thing. It's all about flavor. And in order for us to have good meals for our family, we're cooking without salt, right? That's where a lot of this focus is, developing flavor. We need to have tools in our kitchen drawer that allow us to develop and provide flavor to our food without using salt. So we have to have good ingredients that we start. I mentioned stock is an ingredient that we make from other things. So it's a flavorful liquid prepared by simmering meat, poultry, seafood, or just vegetables. We can make vegetable stock very easy in water with aromatics until the flavor is extracted. Okay, so it's like making tea out of bones and vegetables. We use it for many, many other things. That's why I call it base or an ingredient. It's not, nobody serves stock, but we use it to make so many other things. That's very, very important in the professional kitchen. It can be very important at home as well. 3 types of stocks, okay? White stock, which is basically when you make chicken soup, chicken stock. Okay, it has no color, it has light color.
Fish stock.
Then we have brown stock, which is dark. That comes from, you'll see from roasting, or everything that goes into the pot is brown. That's what they make brown sauce or espanol, or what you might call brown gravy with. It has that color. Then what we call an essence or fumet. That's what we do with fish and also like vegetable stock. The whites and the browns, white stock typically takes 2 to 4 hours to cook with chicken bones. Brown stock can take at least 4 to 6 hours and more. A fumet can take 15 to 30 minutes. Now, what do we put into a stock to make it so good? There are 5 basic ingredients. The hints are right there on the screen. Bones. We have to have bones. The bones, the bones, the bones. I got bones. We got bones. I'll show you the bones in a minute. It's not just any bones. You can't, let's say you're going out and you're making prime rib or whatever, okay, in the old days. And you got those rib bones. Those rib bones are not going to make a very good stock. What you need to use stocks that have bones that have lots of cartilage. So we want to have joints. We want to have shin bones, ankle bones, knee bones, neck bones, okay, shoulders that have cartilage and from the joints. And that's where we get the collagen. That's what gives the stock body. So when it's nice and cold, after you're done with it, and you have a bowl of chicken jello in your refrigerators, you know that you did a good job. So for chicken, we basically want backs and necks. But you can throw in, and wings are also help as well. For a brown stock, they can make brown with chicken or with beef. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the animal that you're using, the white or the brown. That's the technique. For bones, water. Obviously, we have to use water. Aromatics. Okay, the aromatics are considered the aromatics are the, and those are things here like bay leaf, thyme, and parsley. Those are the three. Okay, here's parsley from my garden. So nice. Probably not seeing that. But aromatics are the flavor. Those are the things that enrich it to make it more than just water with bones in it. And the mirepoix, mirepoix is a standard, another standard ingredient. We use it for everything, and you can use it for everything because it gives base flavors to whatever you're cooking. Mirepoix typically is made up of onions, carrots, and celery. The ratio is 2 parts onion to 1 carrot, 1 celery. So you have a pound of onion, it's a half a pound of carrot and a half a pound of celery. You can substitute. If you're making a white stock, you can use parsnips along with your carrots. More carrots you put in it, yellower it will be. But you can use parsnips. You can use celery root in place of celery. And the onions, you can use leeks, you can use shallots. But typically onions and leeks are the 2 biggest ones to use. So the mirepoix. And last but not least, one of the most important parts of making stock is acid. You have to have an acid component. We're going to start breaking down collagen, gelatin in the bones. So that acid can be in the form of a tomato product, acidic, think of it, wine, so I have on the picture there, which also works, red wine, white wine. Or you can use even, in small amounts, you can use a lemon juice or certain fruit juices to introduce the acid as well. Anything else you can think of?
Rice vinegar.
Well, vinegars, it has vinegars as well. Rice vinegar, plain vinegar, something that's not really going to interfere. You're not going to put enough in to, hopefully, to affect the flavor. So bones, water, aromatics, mirepoix, and acid. We're going to use all of those today.
Just a little bit of trivia information. I was looking up sodium content of fruits and vegetables, and 2 stalks of celery have 115 milligrams of sodium, 10% of your intake. So when we said no added salt, there are products that have salt in it already, just naturally, because it absorbs water.
Yeah, so that's interesting because we try to stay away from processed meats because they have nitrates in them, sodium nitrates. Where do you think they get sodium nitrates from? Celery leaf, celery seed. In fact, if you don't have what they used to call saltpeter, that's the same thing as the nitrates. You can grind, like make a corned beef
with celery leaves.
With celery leaves and celery seeds. A lot of them, but you can still do it because they have that nitrate in them as well.
And the sodium.
Okay. Can I continue?
You may.
All right, so let's start here. We're going to start with the chicken stuff. These are chicken bones, obviously. These are backs. And I had some chicken on Friday night, so I cleaned it up and took some of the extra bones and meat. This has been just cleaned. The FDA will tell you, typically now, they don't recommend people wash chicken. Oh, that's kind of counterintuitive. But they're worried, or they've seen that more people splash. When you wash chicken, it splashes and they end up contaminating counters or the other sink or other tools. And then they pass on salmonella without even knowing it. get sick. So there's really nothing to wash off the chicken other than some blood. And it will, in the cooking process, it will, if there are any salmonella or germs, the cooking process is going to take care of that. So you're not going to wash them away. They're still going to. So then I also have here my mise en place. I have my mirepoix. So I have my, and some of my aromatics. I have my onion, my carrot, celery. I got a short piece of celery here. And then I got some parsley and some garlic, because I'm going to show you some knife skills with those as well, the best ways to process them. But I need the parsley stems for the stock as part of that aromatic, the bay leaf, the thyme, and the parsley stems. We're also probably going to do some black peppercorns. Okay, is that something you wanted to
No.
offer?
Do you want me to start cooking the chicken?
No,
We'll do vegetables first.
you can't. I mean, typically I will have all this done when I'm going to make it. That's what I call mise en place, and everything in its place, ready. So, but we can start the chicken and then add the vegetables as we go on. So I'm moving over to the stove. Yes, Brian.
I can do that while you do the vegetables and demonstrate.
Okay. So I want them to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So obviously you put your chicken, your bones in the pot. Oh, all in there. Now I have a secret formula for you.
Hold on, Rob. Can I get you guys to switch mics?
Can you get us to?
Switch microphone.
Okay.
And Mindy, while you're doing that, quietly see if you can get that microphone to work.
Okay. Now.
Oh, he'll hear you. All right. I may have to restart that again, Josh. So
You're fine. Yeah, go.
when making,
Go on.
okay, thank you. So when making stock, I have everybody, all our age, you all remember the number 411, right? Who did we call when we wanted to learn, when we needed information? We called 411, right? So 411 happens to be the ratio of bones to water to mirepoix. So you're always like, well, how much water do I add? You know, because sometimes you add too much and your stock or your soup is weak, you don't add enough, and then the meat dries out and all that. So 411. So for every 4 pounds of bones, 1 gallon of water, and 1 pound of mirepoix, which means a half pound of onion, and a 1/4 pound of carrot, and a 1/4 pound of celery. Okay, 411, 4 pounds, 1 gallon, 1 pound, and it'll always come out right. Okay, now when you make stock, the important thing is now we put the bones in the pot. We're going to put water over it. What kind of water do we use besides clean, drinkable? We always start with cold water. Okay, always cold. Otherwise, because that helps to dissolve and break down the gelatin and the collagen in the bones. If you throw hot water on them or drop them into boiling water, everything just cooks on the outside and seizes, and nothing has a harder time penetrating. It's like potatoes. You always start potatoes in cold water, right? Because you need to allow the water to slowly get into it. So we're going to put, I have 2 pounds of bones, so I have 2 quarts of water. Now, the other trick, I don't know, Josh, if you had that shot there from the stove, what you also see is now, if you don't have a measuring device and all you have is your tap or whatever, you can notice that the water is just over the top of the bones. So there's the easy method. Just cover the bones with water, but not excessively. You know, maybe a ½ inch, 1 inch over the top of the bones is also a good way to do it, depending. So we've got our chicken in there. I'm going to do some knife cuts for you. Come back to the cutting board. Let's start with the onion. Okay. The onion is the fun one of everything. Now, if you guys watch the Food Network, you've probably seen this a million times, right? Now, first thing we need to do is remove the dogs from the kitchen, please. So, the end of the onion, there are two ends. There's the root end with all the fuzzy hairs, and there's the stem end. That's the green part that grows up out of the ground. You remove the stem, leave the root. Okay. Now, at home, I would typically start peeling this and work this onion while it's whole. All right. And I take my knife and just draw a little line. Mine's very sharp, right to the base, and then start to peel. Now, it's also just as easy. It's a little faster, we think, this way. We've done races before. Peel the onion skin around. And see, I make a little, I tie up the root, because the root's got all those fuzzies and it's also got dirt in it. So I hold the dirt in it and then cut that off. And now you have a nice clean onion, okay? Now the other way to do that is to just cut it in half first and then peel each side. Now, when you're going to cut that onion in half, you've already cut off that stem. Lay that end down. You want a flat surface always on your cutting board. Flat surface. Then run your knife straight through the root, top to bottom. See how I did that stroke? I just quick push forward. I did not really use a lot of energy pushing the knife down. Now, depending what you're going to use your onion for, you're either going to need to, everything calls for chopped or diced onions. And sometimes you just cut those and chop them. But you've seen this on TV probably. And it's what I call the tic-tac-toe. It's where you make three sets of cuts. One horizontal, the other vertical. Okay. And then across, cut it out. So now you have to have a sharp knife. And if you notice, I move the onion to the front because I want my knife to be level. And if I'm on the cutting board, I can't get my hand down and the knife is at an angle. So then I just draw it. Fingers, now, very important, we call it the claw. When you hold food while you're cutting with your free hand, fingertips only. Never lay your hands flat. That's how you cut your fingers off. And my first rule of thumb in the kitchen is we need our thumbs, don't cut them. So hold them with the fingertips, and I just draw my nice sharp knife and pull it 3/4 of the way through. Now I'm just going to do a few cuts because this is for the stock, so I want it to be pretty big. So I've done that. Now I've done 3 cuts horizontally. I'm going to do about 5 or 6 vertically. Okay, there's my tic-tac. And then we cut across. And I'm doing like a pretty good size 1/2-inch dice here. But we don't really care. You don't have professional kitchens at home. So you don't have to worry about every cut being exactly the same. Especially we're making stock. In fact, I can even leave the root in there. I wouldn't serve that normally. Yes, you may put it on the stove. Now, I just want to show you another way to do this. Another way to cut an onion. If you're going to cut an onion for salads and for other dishes, what we call julienne, which is a straight cut. Here's the root at the bottom. I'm going to make a triangular cut over the top of it and remove the root. See, I removed it. I'm going to throw it in the stock pot, but normally I would throw it away. And now I'm going to do what we call a julienne. So that's cutting with the grain. The onion has a grain front to back. take your knife and just cut with that. And you get these wonderful, beautiful julienne slices. You can lay it down again. And you get these really nice slices of onion, which are really much prettier and look good in your food rather than the only when cutting it across like you're cutting for for onion rings. The only time you really cut an onion across the face is if you're making onion rings or you're using them for a sandwich like a hamburger. Okay. Otherwise, these two ways are really better. This is my favorite. I use this every time I cook with the dish. I use the julienne. Yeah, she cuts it there. Right. Okay. So there's my onion. I'm gonna put that in the bowl. Nope, don't have to. It's going in the stock. Then he said, why don't you wash the bowl first? It's got the raw chicken. But that's going in the stock anyways. It's all going to be cooked, so there's nothing dangerous there. No, let's do the carrot first. Okay. Now, when we make stock, the other important thing to remember is we do not boil stock. We simmer. You want it about 200 degrees. So you want little tiny bubbles, like champagne bubbles coming up through your stock, not a rolling boil. A rolling boil will give you a cloudy, nasty looking stock with all sorts, it's like a hurricane in there, and everything's floating around and blowing around, and it's just really not pretty. You want a beautiful stock to make beautiful soup with, and because the other thing besides making food taste great without salt is also making it look great. Okay, so we have to make sure our food looks good. So simmer it.
You take a shot at the stove, Josh, and it be boiled just coming in up.
Right. Now, I want you to watch my technique for peeling a carrot. We've all got these peelers. Used to do the back and forth real fast, but then I learned the safer, easier, quicker way is using your peeler, holding like the carrot at the top in your hand, rotating, then doing a full stripe all the way down from top to bottom. Get the whole thing done. Easy. You don't have to go back over the other end. And it's ready. Now, one of my culinary heroes is Jacques Pepin. Anybody watch Jacques Pepin? Watch him on YouTube. He is like the original master teacher from years and years in the days of Julia Child. But he's still around and he still has his cooking programs. He does little, you see him on Facebook too. He does little 3-4 minute cooking things that are very, very informative. Now he learned the same way, but his chef or mother taught him to do it towards himself, which I found very interesting. He peels everything like this, but does the same thing. Okay, how do we deal with a carrot and how do we make nice cuts? That I'm not going to put in my soup. Okay, with a carrot or something round, again, round is dangerous in the kitchen. So I'm going to cut this in half. Then first cut, I have to make it flat. So I'm going to cut in about 1/4 to 1/2 inch and take my knife, push. See, that piece came off. Now I have a nice flat side to work with. And now this is the key to making nice square cuts if you ever want to. We're not really worried about perfection in knife cuts here. You're not in culinary school. But it's nice to have, the thing is, if things are the same size, that's important. When we make soups, we'll talk about that. You want things to cook at the same rate. And if you have really big pieces and little pieces, they aren't going to cook the same rate. So we try to have consistency. Also, so the way to do that is what I call is again 3 cuts. It's planks, then sticks, then cuts or dice. So the planks are you're cutting. I'm going to do, let's say, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch thick pieces. See? Now, if I was in a really high-end kitchen, these 2 pieces would be thrown away. They won't be thrown away. They'd be used in the stock pot or for something else or puree. So now I've got planks. I'm going to make it into sticks. So I'm just going to do a quick large dice here because we're making stock. So you got planks, you got sticks. Now, if you want to do the dice, Okay, straight across, and there you go. Same thing again. Now, another cut that I use a lot at home is what we call paisan, okay? And that's basically a half moon or a quarter moon. So you can just cut your carrot in half, and then, especially when I'm making soups and such, I try to cut my vegetables so that they fit in a spoon. There's nothing worse than having stuff bigger than your spoon and you're trying to figure out how to get it in your mouth, okay? Or you can do it in quarters and make little triangles. Watching my rocking motion. Anybody notice anything else about what I'm doing here? Notice how I am cutting at an angle. I don't have the knife in front of me like this trying to do this. 45 degrees. Everywhere in the kitchen, we do things at 45 degrees. So you should either stand straight in front of your cutting board and your counter, and then hold the food at a 45-degree angle. And this way, because if you try to do it straight, you see how my arm is like bouncing on my belly and all of that, and my wrist is twisted uncomfortably. So if you do it at a 45-degree angle, now my arm has a full motion. My wrist is straight, so I'm not going to hurt it. And I can cut, 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 cut. Everything is 45 degrees. Okay, there's the carrots. I'm going to keep my peels as such since we're making stock anyways. The celery. Now, if we had a whole stalk of celery, I would show you to trim it off and then cut it into pieces. Okay, this is towards the bottom, it's pretty tough. And then the same thing, now you can make dice by going across. Okay, really simple. But we use celery sometimes, especially Mindy. She likes to do this. You know, she gets the whole big head of celery, and then she just starts at the top and works her way down. She doesn't pull off individual stalks. She just cuts across and starts using it. So I can do the same thing. Now, these are a little big, so I'll make a couple of cuts this way first.
In your vegetable drawer.
And then now I'll just cut across, and look at that. We got everything we need. I need about the same amount of celery as I have carrot, so I'm pretty close there. Okay. If you're off a little bit, this is not rocket science, guys. This is the kitchen. This is hot cooking. So if you have a little bit too much mirepoix compared to your bones, it's not a big deal. You'll just have a little bit more vegetable flavor in your stock. If you have more bones, it'll be, meatier. If your carrot, onion, celery ratio is off a little bit, it's okay. So now I'm just going to take these and add them to the stock. Because I had 2.5 pounds. So I needed, really, I've got a little bit extra here, but we like it that way. So there goes a lot of vegetables, the mirepoix. Now, the only other thing I have to do is the aromatics. Now, the aromatics, as we said, include, back to the cutting board, bay leaf, thyme. Now, typically we would use fresh thyme and make what's called a bouquet garni and tie all this stuff up. And parsley. Now, the parsley that we use is it's too young, it's too fresh, is the stems. We're going to save the tops for something else, to make some tabbouleh or use it for garnish or just throw it in salad. Nothing like fresh parsley in a salad. I love it. So what can we do? Not everybody has butcher twine at home and cheesecloth or the tools to do that. So a nice thing is,
I found in the grocery store tea filters. You have a Chinese market near you. They have their tea bags, so you can make your own tea bags.
when you buy bulk tea.
When you buy bulk tea, I'm sure they have bags. We'll use them for our herbs.
So there goes a bay leaf. Here goes some parsley stems. You don't need a ton of this. And honestly, I'll give you another little secret of mine. Since we're going to strain all this later on, do I really even have to put it in a bag? I'm going to strain it all out. But the chefs like using these bouquet garnis because they tie a string around them and then they can take them out because actually, this thing will be done after about 20, 30 minutes. So the stocks are going to cook for 2 to 4 hours. And I'm going to add some peppercorns, which is not typical. But that's up to you if you want to add extra flavor to your aromatics. And Mindy, do you want garlic in the stock? You can get the ginger out of the refrigerator without knocking over the cameras. Okay. But you could throw a clove of garlic in there. Mindy likes ginger. Well, we always put ginger in our chicken soup, our chicken stock. It's really good.
Go walking and talking. And living in. Ginger is good for you.
Okay, got some ginger. Throw it all in the bag. Tuck in the lid. Or you can just drop it in. If something comes out, it's not a big deal. So let's look at the garlic for a second. Most of you probably know this. Again, I know there's so much good stuff on the television as far as food networks and cooking shows, and they all tell you how to, cut garlic and stuff. But let me show you the couple quickies because there's always someone that may not know. So you've got a bulb of garlic. It's got where it was attached to the base, the root, and then the other end, where the stem was. So I like to remove the little root piece, cut those off because you can't eat them. They don't break down and they're hard. I don't want them in anything. Then most of the time you don't need your garlic to be beautiful. Okay. So the first step is always to break it. Even before you peel it, take your nice chef's knife on top, take your hand and
Make sure the
smash it.
side of the blade is aimed downward.
Then all you got to do, pick up the skin, peel, and off it comes from the garlic most of the time. There we go. Same thing here. So again, yes, there's always the garlic crusher, which I'm not real fond of, but Mindy likes it.
You're doing a lot of garlic.
Yeah, if you're gonna do a lot of garlic. So now we've already got it halfway there. Now, if you want chopped garlic, we just, again, see my hands, my claw, and also the knife I'm using my knuckles as a guide. So I could look at you and do this and not worry because my knuckles are telling the knife where to go, and that's not with my fingers. Now I'm just going to chop, 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 chop. That's what you do with your garlic. Now, if it calls for slices, obviously just slice. Typically, it doesn't really matter. The biggest thing people tend to do is they overcook or burn their garlic, and it gets bitter. Okay, so I'll leave this here. And I wanted to show you one more thing with some parsley, and that's a cute little trick. A lot of people probably know it, again. But when you have to chop a lot of parsley, excuse me, rinse my hands. It's difficult to just take this bunch of parsley here and try to chop it up really fine, because when we do chop herbs, they're supposed to be so fine that you cannot tell the difference. You cannot see any difference between one cut and another. So one, I don't waste the stems anymore. I don't just pick off all the leaves. It's too expensive these days. And, when people did these recipes years ago, do you think, especially like if cilantro, if you're down in Mexico, Do you think people throw away those stems? No, they use them. They're power packed with flavor. So take your and nutrients. Take your parsley or your cilantro and just crush it into the smallest ball that you can in your hand. Then take your knife, just work right across with those knuckles. You get a couple of few that run away, but see, there you go. So now you just got to do a few times back and forth. Now, most when I do this, I'm holding the knife still like I normally would, thumb and forefinger and three, putting my hand on the other end by the tip, and then just chopping up and down. Not much muscle here. I'm not, trying to exhaust myself. So we just chop, 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 chop. Mindy will use this later. She's going to make some tabbouleh. If we have some mint, it'd be even better. Okay, so that's the parsley. That's the knife skills part of this program. Okay. Okay, down to 2. Okay, well, you don't need the lid on it. Okay, it's okay if it'll boil it'll cool down. Don't worry about it. All right, so next so we just made a white stock. That's the chicken bones with the aromatics and the mirepoix and the water. So that's a white stock. You notice that everything that went into that pot was not previously cooked. It was all what we consider white or blanc in French. Now, we're going to make also a brown stock. So here's what you can do, Mindy. Now, also, by the way, if this is on screen, the stove, you can we're starting to get some foam and scum on the top. You can take a ladle and dip it in there and skim it off. Just like this. Don't worry if you're throwing away a little of the soup, it's probably just the fat on the top as well, because we left the skin on and such. So we are going to want to defat our soups. I did pull off all the large pieces of fat from the chicken before I put it in the pot. So that always helps. But now, see, now it's pretty clean. Big difference. I'm going to put this on the other burner. Bring this pot. Can you fill the thing with water, please? Sure. Oh, okay, that's fine. Just wait. So here comes the brown stock. Brown stock is flavor. Now you can make brown stock with beef bones, with veal bones, chicken bones, duck bones, vegetable bones. See, the vegetable stock, the veggies are the bones, the carrots and the celery, the cabbage, the tomatoes. What you have to do, though, is give them color. You have to roast them. Where's the other? Okay, I want to show you this. Okay, Josh is the, should come to the cutting board or just come to the camera?
You can come straight to the camera.
Okay, so.
A little higher, a little higher. There you go.
Okay, I can see. So now you see this, these bones have been cooking. I put them in a 400-degree oven. Total time was about an hour and a half. And the bones did about 45 to an hour. And then I put the vegetables in, the mirepoix, and everything's all nice and brown and dark. Now, one more thing I have to do. I haven't put the acid in. So I'm going to use a tomato product. I have tomato puree. Typically would use tomato paste, but I didn't have any. So I took some tomato puree. That's just tomato paste with water in it. So no big deal. But you need to cook your tomato product before you use it. Very, very important. You don't want to just throw it in there and cook it. So what we do is take the tomato product and put it on top of the bones. in the vegetables. Not a lot. I'm using about 2 ounces, 2 to 3 ounces of tomato product. That's it. It was paste. It'd just be a couple of spoonfuls. I put this in here on the bones and the mirepoix that I've already roasted off. It'll go back in the oven for a few minutes. Okay. And you want it to brown. Now, that's a trick to know. When using tomato paste anytime, if you're putting it into a sauce, into a tomato sauce to thicken your sauce. And a lot of people say, you know, you've never been shown this. This is kind of the French way. It's very important, and it really makes a difference in the end product, is cooking your tomato product. So if you're using tomato paste in a stew or something, you want to put it in the pan after you put it, after you sweat your vegetables and such, and then it only takes 30 seconds to a minute for the tomato product just to lightly brown, to caramelize. It brings out all the natural sugars and gets rid of that harshness that you get from tomato paste. The same thing if I'm making tomato sauce. I always do the paste first if I'm using it, you know, with my onions and garlic, and let it cook for another minute before I add the rest of the tomatoes. So same thing with this. We put it in the oven with our bones and our mirepoix and allow it to cook off and brown for a couple of minutes. So it gets, you don't get that acidic, you know how you always have to have sugar when you use tomato paste to sauces? You don't need to do that if you do this first, because you bring out the natural sugars and get rid of a lot of the acidity by browning it first. It's what we call in French singer, to sear, to, you know, to singe it. We have to singe it. So for the sake of time,
You're not allowed to eat tomatoes. I actually found a recipe from the National Kidney Foundation cooking a red pepper bell pepper sauce. I haven't tried it yet, but it looked really good. So plenty of sites there, 4 recipes. Go to the American Heart Association, if you go to the Kidney Foundation, because of course kidneys are affected by sodium and potassium, which all of us are, that have had the condition, not me, member of my family. Don't be afraid to search those recipes. Most of them are pretty good, and then once you get a little bit better, you're going to still bland. You got to learn to add a little extra flavor.
right. Now, if you're making stock, though, you cannot use peppers. We don't put potatoes in stock. They'll starch it up and make it cloudy. If you put peppers in the stock, all the stock is going to taste like is peppers. So we don't use those either. Now, I'm taking the rest of the mirepoix and such and putting it in the pan. It's all nice and brown. Maybe we'll get to this camera. But then I need to deglaze as well. So if you notice, the bottom of this pan, it has lots of good stuff on it still. It's got all this little charred bits. And this is what we call soup, which means flavor. So yeah, just give me a cup or so. That's about it. That's the cold water. You can pour the rest of that on top of our bones. We're going to need some more, I think, a little bit.
Yep.
So take a spatula or something and scrape up all these beautiful little brown bits. Now, I would usually get the pan really hot and then pour some wine in there and deglaze it with wine and give it that nice wine. Gives you umami flavor, which is, you know, that savory, beautiful flavor. But this water is getting all nice and colored. It's just getting pretty brown as I dissolve everything. It also makes it easier to clean the pan because everything is gone.
But if you have anemia, if you cook in cast iron, you do get some of that iron absorbed into your food products. So.
Where'd it go again? All right. Okay. There we go. So notice already how brown the water is turning because everything here is brown. Don't worry that the onions look like they're a little burnt. That's okay. They will just add more color. We do a thing sometimes where we do Sanjay and onion, where we cut it in half and put it on the burner and burn it in order to add more color to stocks and sauces. A little trick if you need it. So, all right, that's about ready. I need my aromatics. I have my bay leaves. No, this I'm not gonna bother putting in the bag. I have some peppercorns. Um, I have some more bay leaf here. This beef, so I can do a little bit extra bay leaf. And if you don't use bay leaves, you should. And peppercorns, and there's that more the garlic and the peppercorns. It's okay. Again, it's all about you. What do you want to eat? What flavors do you like? If you don't like garlic in your food, or if you're allergic to garlic, by all means, do not use it. But if you like garlic, there's no reason you can't. But here's the deal. Here's my parsley stems. They're going in as well. Because I'm going to strain that all out. Again, I mentioned that stock is an ingredient. So you want your ingredients to be neutral. You don't know what you're going to make with that stock unless you're doing it purposely for another dish. But if we make stock, we'll put it in the freezer. We'll chill it down in the refrigerator. And then even, I think I have one. I could look. Oh, yeah, here we go. Pretty sure. As long as everything doesn't fall on me. Nope, I got it. So, 1 quart of chicken stock. Perfect. Okay, so after it's cool, we put it in Ziploc bags and lay them down, and they don't take up any room in your freezer at all. You can stack them up. You can, you can have a couple gallons of stock without taking a whole lot of space out. On this side here, that white stuff, that's the chicken fat. So as it starts to thaw out, we can just lift and remove the fat right out of the stock. So if we want it totally defatted. A little bit of fat's good for the flavor. And it's good for the calories. We're constantly healing. Those of us that have had dissections and aneurysms and the surgeries, I mean, they told me that it would take, 16 to 18 months for me to heal completely from my surgery when I had my dissection. It's now been 13 months. Okay, and I still have those days. So the point I'm getting to, which I came from the fat, is that, and Mindy will back me up on this, we need calories. Healing takes an exorbitant amount of calories. This is not the time to be worrying about our weight. I mean, we don't want to blow up like balloons. You don't want to be eating chocolate cake and ice cream and all that stuff so that you.
Those is protein. Protein is only need about 65 to 70 grams, which is not a whole lot of protein. In reality, that's about 7 ounces a day.
So just important though, don't worry too much. We want to spend more time worrying about the sodium in what we eat and the potassium. And then the calories come later, okay? And we want to watch our fats, of course. Those of us that have, hyperlipidemia, cholesterol issues, you're going to watch your saturated fats. I'm going to be cooking pretty much exclusively with grapeseed and olive oil. Rather and try to. Right, there's lots of healthy oils out there, but instead of butter, though butter is not necessarily the evil either all the time. There are some good things about it, but we can substitute oils for butter in most all of our cooking, which I'll show you in some of our next sessions. So our beef stock, our brown stock, I should say, because this could have been the chicken and that could have been the beef, the white. We just didn't roast the beef bones. Back down. Okay. And so if I don't know if you can see that or not, if we switched over to the stove again, that's just starting to come to a simmer. I see the water starting to, come up around just before a boil. So this is real. This is where I want it. This is the temperature that I want it at for the whole process. So we are at, I'm going to stir it because some areas are not as warm as the other. So we got to get it going. Because I know it was starting to boil in the middle, but we're only in the 160s. I need to get up to 200. This one here, the white stock, the chicken, is 211, 212. It's at a boil, and we're reducing it. We've turned it down, and we're going to let that cool down a little bit so it just simmers for the next couple hours. Again, the white stock will take 2 to 4 hours. That's all it takes to make chicken broth, chicken stock. The beef or veal bones take longer, 4 to 6 to 8. Some people do it overnight. So let's talk about, because I'm probably going to do that overnight. So this leads me into, I just used a word as well, broth. I said stock or your broth. Stock and broth are not the same things, at least technically as far as the French cooking methods and our professionals are concerned. This is stock. It's made from bones, right? Bones, water, mirepoix, aromatics, and acid. That is stock. Broth is a stock that has been enriched with meat. So if you're making chicken soup, and basically a chicken stock, but you leave all the meat on the bones, now you have a chicken broth, not chicken stock. Or they will take ready brown stock that's already made and then cook it a second time with meat in it. These bones happen to have a decent amount of meat on them, so it's almost brothy. But broth technically means it was made with meat as well as bones. Now, we have the thing called bone broth. Bone broth is everywhere, it's everything. That's what they want you to have is bone broth. Okay, it's great for your health. They all the people that make it and sell it talk about all these different great things for your health, and it is good. Just like this, stock and soup are extremely nutritious. They're nutrient dense, most of them, so that you get a lot of bang for your buck, a lot of good things in your bowl that make you feel good. But bone broth technically is the same exact thing as stock. If you look at the ingredients, if you look at the nutritionals, they're all pretty much the same. Sometimes it might have a little more protein. It depends who makes it. And honestly, we looked at a lot of different boxes and they're all contradictory to each other. But people will tell you that bone broth is because they cook it for 24 hours. Well, that's really nice. But after 6 hours, what are you getting out of those bones? Nothing. If you made it right, if you made it with cold water and brought it up slowly to that simmer, you will extract all the collagen and gelatin in those bones. And that's what you want. And that's what that's why they push on the bone broth is all the collagen, the amount of collagen, and it's good for you. It's good for your joints, and the protein's good for you. They're the same, okay? No matter what they say, and we've read and looked all around and tried, it is still the same thing. Broth, bone broth and stock, equal, same line. So it's a modern term. It's more sellable. It's marketing. It makes, I'd rather buy bone broth than some chicken stock in the store. Okay. So that is pretty much where we're going to go. You're not going to be able to watch us make the stocks completely. You'll have to wait till the next installment of our series where we will use we'll use both of these stocks to make soup. And I'll show you, the decanting. The big deal is to strain it slowly. If you can, use a ladle and take the liquid out, leaving the bones in. Don't get it all stirred up. All the bad stuff is sunk to the bottom. So if you are going to pour it through a strainer, do it slowly and carefully, away from yourself.
Make sure
as
you
well.
cool it down before you start
Right.
spraying.
Don't do it right off the stove. So I want to know, Josh, are there any questions? I've been
Uh,
talking so long.
You have been. Let's get these hellos out of the way. Melissa Yee joined in and said, "Maiden voyage!" with an exclamation point. Molly Thomas jumped in and said, "Hi, I'm hungry." John Brenny said, "Hey, everyone."
Hey,
Molly
John.
says, "Looking good, chefs." When you were going over the dating of the cans, Molly was like, "Great topic." And then she said, "Is there any date on a product that you should toss and not eat?"
If I had a can of, yes, especially something like a can of jalapenos, when it's a low acid product, if it has a date on it, it says used by, definitely discard it. Otherwise, you can get botulism.
Oh.
So there's quite a few products that, and don't be afraid to call the manufacturers. A lot of them have dietitians that are their consumer person to answer questions for you. So
The big customer service departments to help, or call a chef. Okay, but honestly, just I mean, Mindy said, certain things, but most of the time you really have to use your common sense. Do not throw the milk out when it reaches the sell-by date. That one I know.
that's bad.
Yeah, I know so many people, regardless. Once it hits that day, glug 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 down the sink, and it's such a shame. It's such a waste of money and a waste of food. We waste so much. Almost 1/3 of the food in America goes to waste. 1/3 of the food grown and produced goes to waste. That's terrible when there's that many people starving. So I live by zero waste. I try to use and reuse and recycle. As you saw, we have our compost tin on the where all the stuff, even my coffee grinds, everything goes there, and it goes out to Mindy's garden eventually. We have a composter. But that's why I use the stems. It's why we just can't waste. So, all right, Josh, that was a long answer to that question.
Right on. And then Molly said, "No, not my coveted celery," when you were talking about things that were made with preservatives and how they were using a lot of celery to get things in there for, I think it was something with nitrous. What were you saying?
Nitrates.
Nitrates.
The celery actually is a nitrate. That's where it actually came from originally.
That's the stuff they call it pink salt. That's the stuff they use to cure all the meats. We are not watching.
Yep.
So that's what they use to cure meats. They put it in corned beef, they put it in bologna, they put it in salamis, they put it in all this stuff, and the sodium nitrates and nitrates. They used to use it in bacon. A lot of it now you see it, they'll say on the package, nitrate free, no nitrates, because they're bad for you. But they also related the nitrates, the purified nitrates, into like cancer causing and things of that nature. But Molly, be careful with all that celery. We know, everybody knows, it's always been the diet food. But
if you have kidney problems, think twice about celery.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Good to know. And then Molly said, lever onion cutting, root cutting tip. And I thought that she meant, "I love your onion root cutting tips." But what she really meant was clever.
Okay, wrapping it up in the skin and then popping it off.
I believe so.
Yep.
When you pulled out the garlic press, Melissa Yee commented, "I like the Joseph and Joseph garlic press."
Yeah.
Well, this garlic press is actually the commercial one, so that you can actually make slices and
crushed.
And it gives you the little tool to clean it. I had to show Rob. But it makes really nice sliced garlic, and I don't have to worry about getting my hands on.
So I like that.
Okay, here. So let me see here. John Brenny says, "So many great simple tips." Holly Grizz showed up and said, "Made it. Sorry I'm late. Been sick." We said, "Hi, Holly. Sorry to hear you're not feeling well." And then she said, "Good evening. COVID finally caught up with me. It's been kicking my butt. LOL. Thanks for having me." And we said, "No,
Absolutely.
not COVID." And our Marfan ambassador, Bill Barnhart, has said, I believe there shall be a nitrate aisle at the grocery store that houses hot dogs, bologna, squirt cheese, and chips.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all in the same cabinet in the grocery store too. You go in the deli, it's like
All the
all the
deli
hot
meat.
dogs, all the liverwurst, all the salt. But even if you
Bologna.
look at the turkey, because we're trying to find a turkey that has, without having to buy a fresh turkey, that has sodium less than 60. Most I'm seeing are like 540 kind of low salt, which 260 for 2 ounces is not bad. But it's really hard to find. So we find that we're cooking a lot.
And when you do buy, watch your poultry, because a lot of the poultry, obviously, you don't injected with saline solution. You know, they'll say 5% saline solution. That's what they're legally allowed. Some are more. When you get those really cheap marinated, the wings, things like that, they can have 15, 20% sodium solution in them. Some of those marinated, the pork loins, the pork tenders. That's why if you look at the nutritionals, the sodium is so high because there's a lot of salt in that water, and it helps them gain weight. So when you're buying a 2-pound piece of pork tenderloin, you're only getting 1.5 pounds of pork tenderloin and a 1/2 pound of water,
if
or
it's
salt water.
marinated.
Salt water. So we try not to buy now the dry pack, air dried chickens that aren't soaked in salt water, and so they, because you should love the Costco chicken, but when you cook it, you ever see how much moisture comes out of it onto your roasting pan and such, because it's so pumped up. It's very pumped up.
One of the other helpful hints of just shopping in general is, I call it perimeter grocery shopping. Unless you have something specific to buy down the aisle, if you're out of rice or out of maybe your brand cereal or oatmeal, there's really no reason to go down those aisles on a regular routine basis. Everything you need is within the perimeter of the grocery store. Fresh dairy, fresh meat, fresh fruit, fresh bread. Your whole meal is just in that perimeter of the grocery store. So that will help you save a little bit of time on that.
Oh, anything else, Josh?
I think that catches us up with the chat.
Oh, okay. Well, very good. I think we covered most everything I wanted to tonight. We're going to be back in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tonight. So that's the 23rd of May. And my topic right now will be soups, because after stocks, typically I like to show people how to make soups. And those are one of the best nutritious meals we can have, are making soups. And they're also budget friendly, and they're easy to make. I have a simple, easy way to remember how to make any soup you want. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4.
And we'll talk
Simple
about
soups.
different vegetables that you can use that are beneficial, and pulses and grains that you can use in soups.
Yes, the good fiber, all those things we need. So
Hold on. One last comment here from Melissa.
Okay.
Air chilled at Whole Foods and Aldi has good natural chicken, but in LA Chinatown you can buy fresh killed chickens.
Absolutely.
And go for it.
Yeah, here they got the air chilled at Whole Foods, and I think Sprouts. Does Aldi have? I haven't seen them at Aldi.
I've not seen it at Aldi, and I haven't seen it at
Walmart or at Publix even.
Publix. Just started carrying it. They had a heritage chicken.
Yeah, so yeah, they're harder to find, and they're more expensive, obviously, too, because now you're paying for all chicken weight, not chicken and water. It's cheaper to sell water. It's just like, the big containers of detergent that they sold was mostly water when you could buy it concentrated.
But there was a reason they changed that concept.
I know.
They actually, soap, if you notice now, while all the soap is all concentrated, most of us are of an age that it wasn't, they had extra water and they were worried about poisoning. So they diluted it so children could not get poisoned.
That was nice of them. Okay, so I want to thank you all for joining us, and those of you that will join us online after and look at this in the future, because it will be on YouTube Live for perpetuity, as far as I know. So
If you have any questions or things that you're interested in learning how to cook, feel free to post it on the website.
yep, or you can send me a message at aortichope.chefrob, Chef Rob Seltzer at
Aortic.
gmail.com. So Josh, you can put that in the chat.
I'll
Aortic
see if I
Chef
can
Rob.
remember it. I'll make sure it's in the description.
See if
Okay.
I can find it. Yep. I know it's aortichope.chef. I can't remember Chef Rob Seltzer. I'm always
It's
confused.
okay. So
Okay.
yeah, the best way to get in touch with us would be any comments that are left into the underneath the description of the chat. The chat itself lives during the actual live broadcast, so that'll be there for people to kind of see afterwards. But if they have questions, they can just drop them right into the comments later.
Fantastic. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
And people are clapping in the chat, it seems.
Hmm?
People are clapping for you in the chat, it seems.
Oh.
Yay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. We enjoy it. This is fun. This was my other life. All right, folks. Everybody, take care. I am going to start turning off my cameras.